We're going. Maybe this sounds like something you would see framed and in a sale bin at Pottery Barn, but inspiration can come from anywhere. Maybe you see a bartender use eucalyptus or soy sauce in a way that you'd never thought of. Maybe you hear something in the work of Daniel Lanois, and it makes you reimagine your place on this earth and what you're even doing behind a bar in the first place. Daniel Lanois, who comes up in today's conversation, is a legendary record producer, many awards, worked with U2, Sinead O'Connor, The Killers, Dashboard Confessional, Neil Young, not to mention a prolific solo career. He's got the juice, you know? Sharing a space with someone like that can be inspirational, and it was for our guest today. Throughout the first 15 or so episodes of this show, we've heard a lot about where bartenders draw inspiration from. And a lot of them have told me, or you, well, us, that even if they didn't have a direct mentor to mentee relationship, they learned a lot from those around them. I'm Josh Lindley, and this is Branching Out. Today, you'll hear my talk with Lauren Mote, Director of Trade Advocacy and Brand Excellence. I think I got that right. For Patron. And you'll also hear in this talk, Lauren and I are longtime friends. Lauren has taken what she learned about peer mentorship and made it part of her position as a global leader in the beverage alcohol industry. Patron has, for a few years, run a program called The Mob of Mentors. This is a Pecha Kucha style presentation. Go ahead, Google it. It's P-E-C-H-A, and the rest will come up. So anyway, a panel of leaders talk about a specific theme for no more than 6 minutes and 40 seconds. They're accompanied by 20 slides, and it's all very fun to take part in. And if you find yourself in a city where Patron is hosting a Mob of Mentors event, you should definitely go. Enough about all that. On to the interview. Here's Lauren Mote on Branching Out. Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Welcome to Branching Out. Thanks for being on this podcast. I didn't ask you to send me a bio, and I am probably not going to say what your job title is. So could you tell us who you are and what you do in the hospitality industry?
Yes. My name is Lauren Mote. I have been in the industry for 27 years in drinks. And today I serve as the Global Director of On-Trade Excellence and Advocacy for Patron Tequila, and that's at Bacardi, so owned by Bacardi. I live in Amsterdam. I'm a proud Canadian, a wife, and also the mother to a sausage dog called Moondog.
Moondog. We'll get to this later. Did you name the dog after the bitters or the bitters after the dog?
Well, the bitters were named after me. It was my pet name. Because when Jonathan and I, my husband and I first met, we had this common love for a musician from Canada called Daniel Lanois, who you will definitely know of, who I used to serve as a regular at Le Soleil Bistro in the early 2000s. And he had the most amazing and most beautiful song called Moondog, which was about a musician, and a song about creativity and eccentricity and beauty finding its way in different places. It was part of his album, his video album that he had called Here Is What Is. And it was pretty amazing. And somehow, like as obscure as this is, Jonathan was like, I know this album too. And I'm like, what? So Moondog became my nickname. Sundog was Jonathan. Then we had Moondog the Bitters, which was supposed to be Jonathan's chef interpretation of my personality, which is crazy because that's what we did back then. People would taste wine. We would make bitters after people's personalities. Insane. And then we got Moondog and we looked at her and we thought she's either yam because she's orange, like sweet potato, yam, or she's Moondog, and she was definitely a Moondog.
Yam is also a cute pooch name.
It's really
though.
cute. She has 3 middle names. Yam is one.
We'll get into all of your background and how long you've been bartending for. And as you just mentioned, worked at Le Select in Toronto once upon a time when Daniel Lanois was here and around all the time. But do you find in all the positions you've had in your career, there are people who are fixed to one version of Lauren Mote that they've met and kind of continue to function on only that level?
You know, it's funny. I think to my detriment growing up, when you're trying to figure out how to fit into groups, I never fit in because I was always the same. So right. I think every person that I've met along the way in my life, not even just like in the industry, has had to suffer through, for better or worse, with the multiple, styles of Lauren's main personality. So I think anyone maybe listening to this that would be like, hey, I used to work with Lauren like 25 years ago making coffee at Balzac's or something. It's the same Lauren that is today in the boardroom at Patron.
Suffer might not be the right word for it, but I think I know what you're getting at.
Celebrate.
That leads perfectly. So a lot of what we do on Branching Out is talk to everybody about their mentors and who they've learned things from, and occasionally get those people to, through me, ask questions to their mentors. A few weeks ago, talked to Jeff Savage, old friend of yours and mine. He was on that famed brand trip from, 2016, where I don't think any of us have ever recovered or will ever recover from. But Jeff, when talking about his mentors and who he learned everything from, wanted to ask a question, kind of a general question to everybody that he's learned from.
How does authenticity fit into what you thought about when you came into the industry? And how does authenticity feel now that you're like deeply rooted in it?
What a meaty question. And of course,
just light stuff for the end of your workday.
I know, but Jeff Savage would, of course, ask a question like that, because Jeff would never just say, hey, I'm just really curious. Like, what was your first job? The guy is so deep. He's got so much detail, and every question has layers upon layers upon layers. It's kind of like Inception, he's a dream within a dream within a dream. I actually really like the question, and the topic of authenticity comes up all the time. And it sort of leaks a little bit into the first thing that you mentioned, which was multiple versions of Lauren or the same always. I think we kind of separate ourselves into three sort of layers in our lives that we're going through. And this is part of my answer to your question on authenticity. In the first third of our being, we're trying to figure out how to be a person. We just don't even know who we are. We are discovering, every day, every moment, every hour is like a new discovery of something we had never done before. And we're like, oh, that's what this is. And this becomes my observation of it and how I might use it. This becomes the utility of what I've observed. And then the second part is you're trying to take everything that you learned when you were becoming a person and apply that into something that you love, or something that's going to drive your purpose, something that's going to give you energy. And then the third part is how you take everything that you learned and how you give it back to the next layer that is back in stage one again.
So what part are you at right now? I'm
in layer 2.
Yeah.
I'm still in layer 2. Because I think the learning journey, I think it just starts to shrink a little bit. Like, how we visualized it how I visualized it while putting it on a vision board. And actually you would have seen this at Barra Mexico in my Pachacucha. It's like the dotted line becomes a little bit more solid. It's no longer that you are trying to define exactly just who you are within a space, but you're navigating how you're operating within that space, but then also how you're teaching it, because there's no time. There's not enough time on this planet to learn something only and then spend time to figure out how do you give back. You have to do it almost simultaneously. And that's what authenticity is. I think it's wearing your true self on a day-to-day basis, regardless of what stage of the three that you're in. You just go in very real, and you have a very visceral, emotional, and very real reaction to everything that you're experiencing. And that experience and your reaction is exactly what authenticity is. And nobody else can be that same thing. Everyone will be uniquely different.
Amazing. I wanted to dig a little more into maybe something a little easier to grasp. When you and I first met, I think you had just launched Bittered Sling Bitters. Was that 2010, 2011? Is that right?
I started making Bittered Sling, what would eventually become Bittered Sling, in 2008. When we officially made it a commercially available product was in 2012.
Yeah.
So it would have had 4 years of fake life, illegal life.
And you mentioned you and Jonathan have worked together on everything forever. I think there's a relationship podcast out there, like somewhere in the ether, that maybe I'll come up with eventually about power couples and whatnot. But you and Jonathan worked together on Bittered Sling. But who else were you working with, and who were you sort of modeling that after at that point?
So it's funny, because when you talk about something like bitters today, I think any bartender would say, oh, I learned how to make bitters from this person, or, that brand is really cool. In the early days of Bittered Sling, there was certainly no Canadian products that we could model from. The last known Canadian official bitter product that would have been used strictly for making cocktails closed in the 1960s. And so for us, the only thing that we could model against was the utility of it. Angostura is used ubiquitously to make XYZ. Peychaud's is used in this way. There are other brands out there like Bittermans and Bitter Truth and Scrappy's, but beyond that, there was nothing. But what was the identity of Canada? And especially in Vancouver at the time, we really struggled to get the same products to make classic cocktails in the same way that our counterparts in the US. Like it was almost laughable in a way that we're bartenders that make classic cocktails in Vancouver, like amazing classic cocktails, but we don't get access to anything. We had to do special orders for maraschino, for God's sakes. Like I can't even imagine a world today where you would make cocktails and not have access to these certain products. So bitters was in that space. So making Bittersling was almost like for two reasons. On one hand, what is Canada's expression and contribution to classic cocktail culture? We don't want to make anything that's flippant and light. We want something that you could use next to Angostura, next to Peychaud, and it would never be a replacement for those things, but it would be an alternative, and could you make something that used this and that? And so that was part one. And then part two is Canada. And for Jonathan and I, we both have cooking backgrounds. Of course, Jonathan being the professional chef. And for me, I had like my little catering company when I was growing up, Mademoiselle Chef. You know, I love food and I love food science. So for us, we wanted to make something that was an expression of culinary arts of Canada. What is Canada known for? People are like, oh, you make beaver tails and bannock with smoked salmon. And, you know, we know that there's poutine in Quebec. It's like, what? Like Canada is a myriad of beautiful flavors, seasonality, regionality, international cultures, and influence. And so we wanted to demonstrate that within our bitters. So Bittersling became both of those things, and it became successful, not just because of those two things, but because I think Canadians were super proud of it. This was the thing that came from Canada, and it involved lots of bartenders, the Bitter Babe community. I mean, you were a Bitter Babe, Josh, like early on.
Of course.
So it was just really cool to develop something in that way. But we looked from like a mentorship point of view, we looked at chefs, how chefs would develop, how some of like the earliest, iterations of making classic cocktail bitters, from any of the old books and, some of the recipes, or even the way that Angostura came to life, like the history behind that brand. So it was more like not turning a blind eye to the past. The past was really important, the historical context of how we got to this point of using bitters. But then what was the modern approach on how we wanted bitters to be viewed? It also didn't have sugar. It didn't have additives. So it was meant to be like the medicinal tonic because the alcohol tasted good that we made them with natural fruit sugars. And so it was, it was a really cool lifespan of 16 years, actually, almost 14 years on Bittersling.
Yeah, I always thought that it was incredible. Obviously, anything Canadian made is one thing, and there's something to be said, and I'm sure you've experienced this, especially working with Patron for the last few years, and cocktail competitions and whatnot. There's a lot of kind of a flattening of ideas of what a drink should be like and techniques that are used. And something that I always thought was great about Bittersling was that, yeah, it's Canadian made, but there was always refining going on within Bittersling and like expanding while refining, where your bitters from year one didn't taste the same as your bitters from year 4 because you got better at it. And you were willing to admit that you got better at it. And I think it's important to note that the first time you do something isn't necessarily going to be the best version of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first time we started, like the bitters prototypes that we were using were like, they were potable. I mean, you could pour them. Like, I mean, I even remember Jay Jones. I mean, in the one of the first Bittersling Bistro competitions we did in like 2013 or 14, he was pouring our celery bitters by the ounce. I'm like, amazing. This is amazing for depletions. And then you taste them, like, they're just really good bitters. And I remember after we've been making them for a few years, and they were all government approved, and government approved bitters in Canada, they have to be non-potable. So they basically don't want you to make anything that tastes good. If it tastes too delicious, then they're like, no, anyone would buy this and not pay the duty and buy it just from a regular shop, and they drink it in their hallway. It's like, well, no, these bitters, they're supposed to taste good. And we have the refined palate, yourself included, and all of us as bartenders, the bitter, the better. And the more delicious, the bitter, the better. My God. And then we just keep using more and more bitters. So even though they were non-potable, we we started taking more chances on making them stronger and stronger and stronger, because the way the flavors would show up in cocktails were making better cocktails, and they were not masking really good alcohol and modifiers and ingredients, because good bitters, when you don't put sugar in them, they allow other flavors to dance and come to life, versus when you add sugar to the modifiers, it all of a sudden becomes flavor X plus sweetener. So yeah, we're really proud of like the journey we went on with Bittered Sling. Man, that was a crazy one.
So, and sort of at the same time, for different periods of time, you were running Bittered Sling with Jonathan and Bitter Babes, all old friends. But then also you were working with Diageo for a while before moving on to Patron now. How much of what you worked with Bittered Sling and what you learned from working on Bittered Sling can you apply to other brand opportunities that you've had?
I would say the biggest piece of advice to anybody listening, because we never had investors on Bittered Sling, even to the moment that we sold it, and we're still involved in Bittered Sling, but even from the moment that we sold it, we still never had any investors, and that is scary when you think about like a bartender and a chef, like day rate, salary, whatever, and then you end up building, probably the most complex company, non-potable, non-duty paid bitters that you sell in international markets that is using alcohol. Like, I can't think of a harder entrepreneurial endeavor. You become the accountant, the lawyer, the governing official, the marketeer, the commercialization specialist, the distributor, the exporter, the importer, the like quality control specialist, and the manufacturer. Like, we did everything. And so I would say
also, this is something that you're just selling in drops.
And just selling in slow. Okay, there's slow moving inventory, and then there's slowest moving inventory. But because our bidders were so good, it actually was pretty fast moving inventory, to be honest.
Good.
So
Good.
I'm just
congratulations.
Out there. Oh, thanks so much. But I will say that anyone that has a chance to start a business of any kind, to understand what it takes from every function and every facet to run a business. The business does not need to succeed. I mean, if your business succeeds for the long haul and you end up selling it, or you end up like merging it, or you decide to close on your own because that's what you want, whatever success looks like is relative person to person, but you lose 100% of the opportunities you don't take. And when you simply go through life on a day-to-day basis and you never take the chance to start a business, a social enterprise, a consulting business, you want to open a bar, you want to partner with friends and start a product, like whatever it is, you should just go for it, because it teaches you so much about yourself and your capability. And the only way to really learn is by failing through process and trial and error. So the biggest opportunities for me were actually not really about bitters in general. I just think we picked the most challenging and most difficult business, and we succeeded at it. And so I think taking every moment of that, and it wasn't met without lots of fear. I mean, hello, cortisol levels. I think that I lived on a high stress, like fight or flight mode for 15 years, and I still do, but in a different way. But it prepares you in a way that working for a big corporation, it may not seem like it resonates for most of the people just listening in, but just bear with me a moment. When you work in a high pressure environment, like being an entrepreneur, it's not so different than working in a high pressure corporate environment. And when you work in a corporate environment, it is about managing communications, it's managing priorities, it's managing nuances, it's playing politics in a lot of ways, it's building strategy. All of these things take time, and it takes patience, and it's not so dissimilar to running a business. It takes all of those things as well. I think the transferable skills for me, being an entrepreneur and having a couple of businesses and having managed teams and multiple, and managing Four Seasons and, bar programs and different things in multiple markets, it really helped to define the differences, not, who I was up against, but why me? Why was I the person for the job? And in Diageo, it was one of the biggest factors was that I understood how to manage pressure, and I understood how to manage cultural nuance, and I understood how to manage different things that might have been out of my control. It's like, how do you manage them in the moment when your remit is 60 countries and you're always on the road and it's a high stress, high pressure environment, but you still need to deliver. That to me was like an evolution of what I was doing in Bittered Sling. And so, Diageo and World Class was great. But then I think coming into Patron, was no longer a portfolio in 60 countries. It was now, okay, I've been there and I'd done that. And that was hard, but it was awesome. That was an amazing 7 years. Now I'm going to come into Patron. I'm going to work on one brand. I'm going to have 15 countries. And I'm going to be able to write what this job is, because advocacy and on-trade excellence and development in global markets outside the US was brand new at the time for Patron. So this was the first time that I could dedicate building this business for Patron from scratch in global markets, with still managing the same things. And it doesn't come without like a team and a village, but it still comes down to you to be able to build and execute and fight for what you believe in for the bartending community. So it's been, it was a really cool way of looking at it. I don't know that I've really reflected on that in the way that you just presented that opportunity for me. So thank you.
I can't wait to get the addendum email later saying, by the way, I also wanted to say all this. Thank you for going so deep on that answer. And something I'm going to put out before we get into who your mentors are is something that we've already touched on, where no matter what stage of Lauren's career you interact with Lauren, you're always getting Lauren. And I do want to say that since you've taken the Patron job, it's been a more complete, from my eyes, version of Lauren. There's definitely been a glow about you in the last few years that has been in and out over the last 10. You can tell when you're definitely at hummingbird speed. And it's really great to see you working on Patron. It feels very much like the most you of the you that I've gotten to know. All that to say, let's go back in time. When you first started bartending, when you first decided that hospitality was for you, who were some of the people that really stuck out to you as lifting you up along the way or presenting ideas as to how to approach this?
So I hung out with a lot of chefs. And because Canada was it seems so crazy to say this when you look at a map, because we're not isolated at all, but we felt fairly isolated as a community. Away from the US and the UK. And it was really before social media started or picked up speed. I mean, we just got like smartphones or phones of any kind, smart enough that you could get a dial tone and call someone from outside your house. These are like early days that we're trying to educate bartenders on now. It's like, imagine you didn't have any of this. They're like, I can't imagine that world. I'm like, that was previous to 2000, And I think we relied so much on our peer groups and our friendship groups. And if we didn't have the connections to people in person and being really open and transparent about who we were and what we wanted in life, we never would have been exposed to the potential opportunities and learnings from other people. So I am a product of peer-to-peer mentorship, because if I look industry-wise, I was learning from the people I worked with. And it's not because they knew more about cocktails than I did or whatever else. They just had different interests. They were graphic designers, or they were in school, or of course they're actors. There's always lots of actors. They were all actors that also bartended or served tables. They were musicians, they were radio personalities, they were like whoever they were. And I always thought that was really cool, that we maybe didn't belong anywhere particularly, but we definitely belonged together. And then we had this kind of unspoken bond around the world of that. So I feel like the mentorship within those circles of just being friends with cool people that sort of got you and understood that hospitality wasn't for everyone, but it was for us, that was cool. And we really cared about taking care of other people. And then on the other side, I mentioned I spend a lot of time with chefs. So I learned everything there is to know about flavors, not from bartenders. I learned everything from chefs. I learned from reading cookbooks and food science books and Harold McGee's encyclopedias and, spending time with chefs, dating chefs, marrying chefs, and the chefs were all part of my world. And, I did a pilot for a cooking show, and I used to have a catering company. So cooking for me was everything. Food was everything. And then I suppose the other side of it is, the mentors that you have that are irreplaceable, because they teach you about generalized things, not specialist things, but generalized things about how to be a human, how to be a good person. So my mom, Linda, of course, like without saying, my brother, Jake, of course, like just watching what he goes through.
Absolutely love Jake.
Yeah, Jake is the best. He's just so like he's so grounded. He's just like Jonathan for sure.
Well, speaking about, Jeff earlier asking some very deep question, Jake, I think, is better than anyone I've ever met. And I know we're talking to you and I shouldn't necessarily be talking about your brother a bunch, but he's so good at seeming like, oh yeah, I'm just hanging out having a drink. And then you talk to him for 20 minutes and you're like, oh no, I'm deep into the myth of Sisyphus. And he's like, oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, he's a super genius, right? So you give Jake like a topic on anything, and he's like, "How much time do you have?" He's just that guy. So I also feel like he's an honest broker, right? He's a neutral sounding board to share with, and he had to develop into that person as well. So when we were kids, just knowing that we had a crazy family in common was like enough to keep us together as like helping each other along the way. But in terms of other mentors, I mean, again, it'd be like managers that I used to work with. Like I remember distinctly, like Jennifer Hennessy from Goldfish Pacific Kitchen in Vancouver, who was my GM that I worked for when I was the bar manager. And I was like, man, she is a superstar, and she just gets corporate. She just like really understood it. And I was still learning how to do all of this. And then in Toronto, we talk about Le Select again. I mean, the owners of Le Select were my ultimate like in industry mentors at the time. So that would be, Vicky and JJ Kinsack and Frederick Geisweiler. I mean, the three of them had this like 40-year family business of transporting all the things they loved about Alsace and all the things they loved about Provence and bringing them together for this like one-of-a-kind bistro experience where you knew everybody. It was our Cheers. And you'd never think about walking into a French bistro in Toronto and it being like Cheers, but it was. That's where I met all my very best friends working in front and back of house. It's where I learned the most about business, about environment, about surroundings. It's where I met Daniel Lanois and so many other people. And it was really cool. And I don't know that the vibe is still there now because they've sold it, but I still keep in touch with them. But I would say from an industry mentor point of view, I mean, it was them. It was them for sure.
Yeah, Le Select has launched a few important careers. I know whether it's internationally renowned super chefs
Maddie Madison,
or internationally renowned, very elevated, what did you say? Brand excellence is involved in your job title now?
Oh, yes, brand excellence. Brand excellence.
And it's very cool to hear that, yeah, this French bistro kind of, and 25 years ago, tucked away, it wasn't really a neighborhood that had foot traffic necessarily looking for places. You had to go to Le Select. It's kind of incredible. I didn't realize that you'd worked there for as long as you did.
I worked there for 4 years, and it doesn't seem like it was that long, but it was just one of those jobs where we were able to like unpack. And it was just the perfect moment of my life as well, where I was open to like learning this new thing of like coming in, and then I was a sommelier and I was studying wine and the big thick book on wine. And then I continued my wine studies and then was still really invested in the cooking side and, learning French language and understanding Culinaria Française and just like understanding the regions. What goes together grows together. It was a formative moment that transported me out of hospitality for, serving in a sports bar, because my previous job before that was Wayne Gretzky's. And in Toronto. And I loved working like the service well and working fast and making crazy drinks and being there with all the hubbub of everything that would happen during hockey games, meeting Gretzky, etc. But it's like Le Select was the thing that was like, okay, I don't need to move to Europe to have the experience that I actually want in food and drink. It is right here. And how lucky am I that I get to be part of this? That changed me for sure.
Who else comes to mind as people that you learned directly from?
I think, Lynette Marrero was obviously like an early adopter of Lauren Mote fan club. Like she loved me when we first met at Tails. It was during a LUPEC luncheon, which is Ladies United for the Preservation of Endangered Cocktails. And Speed Rack had just launched. We became friends, and she gave myself and Danielle Tatarin the opportunity to bring Speed Rack to Canada. Danielle Tatarin is another one. Like, what a superstar! I mean, she's got her amazing mezcaleria and her bar in Zipolite in Mexico, and she's done more for the Canadian bar scene than I think people give her credit for, and she's pretty extraordinary. Other folks, I mean, I think what Jeff is doing is great. Jeff Savage, who you mentioned already. He's come a long way. Also, Grant Sini, one of my favorite people ever. I mean, most of these people are not like older than me, right? Like the people that I learn from are people all around me, and I don't believe in hierarchical or age-related age statements. I don't believe in age statements when it comes to mentorship. I believe in experience and environment. So, Kate Bushell and Katie Ingram and Christina Vieira, Evelyn Chick. I know I'm going to miss so many people, like what you and Jess are doing. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. There's so many people doing so many great things. I'm just so happy that everyone cares enough that we want to just continue to build in our own little circles of influence and make this industry and this world a better place. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, like Claire Warner and Charlotte Voissy, and also the CEO of Tails, Eileen Weiner. I mean, there's Julie Reiner, Tess Potsdam is here in Netherlands. So, I mean, there's like a lot of amazing people. And I realize that everyone I mentioned is female, but there's males as well.
I mean, that's mostly who I learn from is women as well. Yeah. If I other than Gord Hanna, everyone I look up to is female.
Yeah.
If I was going to ask any of these people that you mentioned as mentors any kind of question, it can be general or specific, what would you want to ask them?
I would want them to answer the question, which is the topic of Mob of Mentors this year. How does history inspire the present? What are the things that bartenders and people coming into the hospitality industry now run the risk of not knowing at all, and we run the risk of losing completely, that is integral to building the integrity and the future of our industry, because it's not about rotovaps and winning awards and removing garnishes from drinks. This industry is about investing in the decades, not on the days, and that's an important question to ask. What is the thing about the history of our industry that is most important to inspiring the present and ultimately the future?
Amazing. Lauren, thank you for taking a half hour to hang out and talk about mentorship and your career and what making bitters in Canada was like 20 years ago. What do you want to plug? It's the end of a podcast, so you say how everyone gets in touch with you and events you have coming up that you think people should look out for.
Well, I am a big fan of mentorship, as you know, and Mob of Mentors is a pretty extraordinary platform that really started as Minibar in 2008 and then transformed into Women Celebrate in 2018. And then as of 2022 has been Mob of Mentors, which is a celebration of everybody. And we've had some incredible speakers through the industry come through. And I would just really encourage anybody who is interested in education and inspiration and development, which should be everybody, obviously, myself included, should just get in touch with us on Mob of Mentors and have a look at what we're doing. It's really impactful, and just eternally grateful for Patron for underwriting the program and also just giving us a chance to build and develop education and inspirational programming that the industry really needs and really cares about. And tip your local bartender.
Lauren, thank you. I'm going to leave on that note.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Super appreciate you taking the time. I know between time zones and sore throats and everything else, it wasn't easy planning out a time to do this, but hopefully your next call is a breeze and you can kind of just set your background to something else and put down some sunglasses and pretend to take part in it.
Thank you, Josh. And love this podcast idea as well. So it's pretty cool.
Thanks so much, Lauren.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Outro. Let's take this in for a landing. We haven't taken it in for a landing at all on this show yet. Another big thanks to Lauren for taking the time to chat with me about the name of her dog and how no matter what you're doing, there's something to learn. If you like what you're hearing, please like and subscribe and tell all your friends about what we're doing here at Branching Out. Tickets for Toronto Cocktail Conference have gone on sale, and depending on when you hear this, you might still be able to get the early bird price. Take a look at everything we do at Bartender Atlas on bartenderatlas.com. And if you're a bartender and haven't signed up yet, come on, man, get it together. Branching Out is made at Pact Studios in Toronto, written by me, Josh Lindley, additional research by Charlotte Cassinel, production by Jesse Colburn and Aaron Verdonk, music by Aaron Verdonk. That whole crew I just mentioned, we're like Ray, Peter, Egon, and Janine, but I'm not telling you who's who. Talk soon.